And welcome to the Citizen Report. I'm John the Shannon. Thank you for joining me today. As always, this newscast is real, in-depth American. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always good to be back with you. I am doing this show live today. It's been a while since I've done a live show. And I'm going to keep this video, or this broadcast today, short. I know I'm still doing it from my room, but later this week I will be back in the studio, I hope. But I have some information to pass along to you, an important announcement to make, and that is this. I'm going to say it first off, because I know people on average tend to drop off as the video goes along, so I want to go ahead and say this up front. Tomorrow, now the time and whether this actually happens is subject to change, but as of right now, I will be live in the capacity of a reporter from I think I can say it, Indian Trail, North Carolina. I'm going to be live from the town hall, and I'm going to be basically witnessing a citizen seeking answers. I'm going to keep it rather vague on corruption. I'm going to keep it vague, but I think you would be well served. I think you would. I think you will want to tune in. Right now, let's say sometime after 2 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be live from Indian Trail, North Carolina on the Citizen Report. It'll be very basic. It won't even be graphics or anything. It'll be me with my phone, most likely, live streaming. Now, where you can find this, again, this is subject to change. If these details change, I will probably make a quick video and push it out on my YouTube channel to modify the announcement. But right now, let's say it's going to be the Citizen Report Facebook page. I will push that link out to other platforms like Stinger.live, and I encourage you to tune in. So let me summarize again, because I know I was kind of being a little wordy there. Tomorrow, Monday, August 2nd, I'm going to be live after 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And I don't mean right at 2 p.m. I mean sometime between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. I will be live at the Indian Trail Town Hall in Indian Trail, North Carolina. A citizen who is a friend of mine is going to be seeking answers. I think he's going to be seeking public records, and he wants witnesses to be there. So in the capacity of a reporter, I will be there to document this and to basically bear witness to whatever happens. I'm not going to provide all the information about the background and stuff. I may interview him at either tomorrow or at a future time to explain all the dynamics of this, but let me just say in quick summary, and then I'll get to the other topics, other things. But let me just say that basically, as I understand this, this government is very corrupt. The town government is corrupt. They're stonewalling. They're refusing to fulfill, let's say, public information requests. If that, I guess that's a right way to put it. So he is now seeking information. Now they have previously made a frivolous no trespassing order against him without due process, and completely frivolous. So that is a reason why he wants witnesses there. I'm aware of one other person being there as a witness, and that person will be there to witness, and I will be there to witness. I will be there not just in the capacity of a citizen, but in the capacity of a reporter. Now, once again, the time and whether this happens is subject to change, but right now, be looking for a live stream on the Citizen Report Facebook page starting tomorrow, Monday, August 2nd, sometime after 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And I will, of course, push that link out to other platforms and other places. You know, if you're on Facebook, hopefully you'll see it on my personal Facebook page. If you're on Stinger.live, hopefully you'll see it there. I know that website's just getting back up on its feet, but I'm going to try to provide the link there. No promises made there, but it will be on the Citizen Report Facebook page. I will, by the way, be testing doing a brief test broadcast on the Citizen Report Facebook page later on today to make sure everything's on the up and up with being able to do that on my phone. So now, having said all that, I'm going to sort of stay in that same topic or in that same vein, but I'm going to kind of switch what I'm talking about just a little bit. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about North Carolina open government. Open government, the laws on open government. And this is, I don't like, he's a Democrat, he's a leftist, but his office, as in meaning the North Carolina Attorney General's office, does have what's called a North Carolina Open Government Guide. So let me go ahead and share my screen right now. And there you go. And this is, again, called the North Carolina Open Government Guide. I think that this is a good primer for what's to come tomorrow. Of course, what happens tomorrow, whether if it happens and when, is subject to change. I'm just saying as of right now, that's where things stand. So let me go ahead and get into this just a little bit. I'm not going to be too extensive about this for time's sake, because I personally, I'm a little bit, I need to kind of not let time get away from me. But let me go ahead and go down here. So we're going to really talk about what, if you think about, let me phrase it this way. If you think about the federal government, they have what's called the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. And basically, in summary, and I have personally done Freedom of Information Act requests myself before on my personal behalf, not for reporting purposes, but just in my personal, and just in, just for like curiosity's sake and things like that, or just perhaps as much as research on a personal basis. But basically, FOIA is basically a way of saying that as a citizen, you are requesting what is public record or government record that is, that's public. And any citizen has a right to do that. Now, that law applies to the federal level. At the state level, everything is different. In general, yes, you have the right to request open public records. But the procedure for such can vary between the several states. Now, again, on the federal level, you have a law called the Freedom of Information Act. Yeah, Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA, the acronym FOIA. That's why you hear a lot, like in the news, you may hear people like someone filed a FOIA request. Well, that's freedom. That's a short way of saying Freedom of Information Act request. On a state level, as I said, the procedure can vary. But here in North Carolina, and that's what's relevant to what is to come tomorrow, the North Carolina is pretty generous in its law favoring the citizen being able to get public records. Now, let me take this screen fuller. So let me take this screen. There you go. Hopefully you can see this better, I hope. And once again, this is the North Carolina Open Government Guide made by the North Carolina Attorney General's office. And this is what they say is the definition of a public record. Public records are materials, documents, electronic or otherwise, made or received by government agencies in North Carolina in carrying out public business. Public records include materials written or created by state and local, I'm stressing the word local, government entities and their employees. So see, this not just applies on the state level, this also applies at the local level, meaning the town, for example. They also include materials written or made by private people or companies that are submitted to the government, regardless of whether those materials were required or requested by the government, or whether they were sent to the government voluntarily at the private person's initiative. Public records include both paper and electronic documents, emails, keyword emails, papers, letters, maps, books, photographs, films, sound recordings, magnetic or other tapes, electronic data processing records, artifacts, or other documentary material regardless of physical form or characteristics. Therefore, text messages are considered public records if they are about public business. Public records include documentary materials that government agencies are required by law to make or collect. Public records also include materials that government agencies make or collect at their discretion in carrying on government business. And I know this is a little wordy, but again, this is kind of, I'm providing this at, and I'm deciding to do this sort of as a primer for tomorrow. That way, if you have watched this episode, I hope, by tomorrow, you will understand a little bit about how the law is in North Carolina, which is applicable in this case. I'm going to keep reading this at least for a couple more paragraphs, and then I'm going to go further down. Maybe more than a couple of paragraphs. I'll just see how much is relevant to this directly. That is, quote, if drafts have been created or received by a government agency in the course of doing public business, they become state property and as such generally are considered public records. A draft does not have to be submitted to the members of a public body or the head of a public agency for approval to be considered a public record. Even if the author of the draft is not a government employee, the draft is public record if it has been received by a government agency. Indexes of computer databases, which every public agency in North Carolina is required to produce, are public records. Indexes include information about data fields, lists of data fields to which public access is restricted and unrestricted, and a schedule of fees for producing copies. The indexing rule does not require a government agency to create a database if let me start that sentence again. The indexing rule does not require a government agency to create a database it has not already created. State laws make some public records confidential and exempt from disclosure. These exceptions are discussed in the denials and exemptions section below. We'll get to that too in a little bit because I'm reading all this into the record, not the whole document. I'm just reading what perhaps is most relevant to what's to come tomorrow. But I am going to read. Let's see here. Now I do have also the actual North Carolina General Statute concerning this matter. I will get to that in due course in just a moment. But let me go ahead and read the start of this next section here. What is the Public Records Act? The foundation of our public records laws is the North Carolina Public Records Act, or the Act. This law makes clear that written materials and other records created or received by state and local government are the property of North Carolinians, and it gives the people a means of enforcing their right to access government records. So notice there, let me get your full attention for a second, what this law is actually saying, what this basically just says is this law is literally to enforce your rights. So they acknowledge that you have a right to request public records from your government. So you have every right to request anything that's deemed public record. Now there are certain exceptions. We will get to that, and the reason why I'm going to get to that is because by having this in the record, it's just going to be in the record what is namely considered exempt, because it would not surprise me if they try to use that as a basis tomorrow. I don't know how things are going to go tomorrow for sure. I don't know, and I just don't know. But I am going to read that section just for the record, because I do believe that has to be very nearly tailored. You can't, for example, if you're on let's say the federal government, for example, you're obviously not going to have things like how to build an atomic weapon, or certain things like that. There's obviously going to be certain things that are exempt, right? So, but obviously we're not dealing with that on a local level, but there are certain things. It does not mean, however, they can use that to railroad against any Public Information Act request that they object to, shall we say. So let me go ahead and share my screen, and let's keep going for a little bit longer. Now, it breaks this down a little bit, and it says the Public Records Act imposes obligations on all state and local government officials to allow inspection by any person or corporation of those government records not specifically exempt from disclosure, and allow the public to obtain copies of public records as promptly as possible upon request and at minimal expense. In interpreting the Public Records Act, and the North Carolina Supreme Court has said the act is to be read liberally in favor of public access to records and information. Our courts also have said that any exemptions from this act's mandatory disclosure requirement are to be read narrowly. So from what this is basically getting at, in essence, is the North Carolina Supreme Court, which is the highest state court in this state, is saying that when it comes to someone requesting a public record, that is to be broadly interpreted in their favor, whereas exemptions are to be narrowly interpreted. In other words, that exemptions are far more narrow than the grants for public information requests. So now I'm going to go ahead and skip on down to where denials and exemptions here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second so you don't have to see me scrolling all through this, and I'll share my screen again once I've got that back up. But now I think this might be good to say. I think this is also good to mention that. And by the way, I'm not just reading. And by the way, even though I'm reading this because of tomorrow, and again, I don't know exactly what's going to be said or done tomorrow, but even though this is what I'm doing in response and in preparation for that, this can also be to your benefit if you are here in North Carolina. And even if you're not in North Carolina, you're going to have to refer to your own state law if you're looking for public records. If you're trying to get information, but at the same time, you basically have to. I'm trying to find the right way to say this. Basically, the principles, I guess, of this can be applied in a number of places, in a number of ways. Like just the general essence of how to submit a request and things like that. So this is the section called Making a Public Records Request, and this is very key. It says, or the question is there a specified procedure for requesting public records? The answer, no. The Act does not specify a procedure, and there is no specific form for making requests. There is no requirement that requests be made in writing except in the case of requests for copies of computer databases. Some agencies might ask for written requests for the records to assure accuracy, but they cannot insist on it. There is no requirement that the person making the request refer specifically to the public records law when making the request. Finally, there is no requirement that the person making the request provide their name or any identification. Requests for public records are public records. So there's a number of things to point out here. First of all, they're very clear that you do not have to follow a specific procedure, at least as far as the state of North Carolina is concerned. I assume that applies everywhere else within the state, with any state agency or political subdivision like county or city, or depending on what you're talking about, town or village. The most that they can compel you to provide is a written request, from what I'm reading here. And you don't even have to provide your name or identification. Basically, you can be anonymous even in requests. Personally, I would prefer to provide my name and address because, if you're doing it, but you don't, but basically what they're getting at is that in theory, at least, you don't have to even provide your identity. But at the most, they can require a written request in the case, as they say here, copies of computer databases. So let's go now. In just a second, I'm going to, well, let me read this too. Basically, this reiterates, the question. The answer to this question kind of reiterates a little bit of what's already been said. Who may inspect or get copies of public records? And the answer to that is any person has the right to inspect, examine, and get copies of public records. People requesting public records do not have to disclose their identity or their reason for requesting the information. And it says to the left of that, it says describe what you are seeking in terms of documents, not questions. So basically, in short, basically the sum of all this is that you can request anything that's public record that's not specifically exempt. Now, let me go to the part where I'm going to read probably about 2 more sections of this. This section has to do with best practices for making a public records request, and it reads, you do not have to follow these practices, but they can make the public records law process easier for you and the public agency. Submit your request in writing, making sure to keep a copy for your records. Be as clear as possible about the records you wish to inspect or have copied. Provide as many details as possible about the documents you are seeking, such as dates, subject, individuals or entities involved, etc. The more specific your request is, the more quickly the agency will be able to find and produce the documents you seek. Describe what you are seeking in terms of documents, not questions. The agency must respond to a request for all emails between John Doe and Jane Smith from November 2017 about streetlights. The agency may not be able to respond to a public records law request that reads, "Why are the streetlights out on Main Street?" So that, that's kind of a duh right there. It's like, if you're wanting emails, say emails, and if you know the sender and recipient, say that, and in the subject matter of it. Although I would imagine in theory that you should be able to request any email that's going to or from a government concerned. Oh, and then here's one more. Determine whether you want to ask to inspect the documents or instead have copies made and sent to you. You may choose both. Now, they also provide here, out of due diligence, a sample request. You certainly don't have to follow this, but you can provide your name, or the date, your name, mailing address, name of custodian of records, agency name, mailing address, and it says dear custodian of records, and you would you might replace that. You probably don't have to replace it there. For example, let's say Register of Deeds. The Register of Deeds in Gaston County is Susan S. Lockridge. It might be best to put her name down, like Dear Miss Lockridge, if you're seeking something from her agency, for example. Pursuant to the North Carolina Public Records Law, I request, and then choose one, or copies of it, or inspection of the following records, and then you describe it, and then you say, and then the next paragraph is only if you want copies. Before charging any fees for making copies of these records, please obtain my approval if the cost will exceed, and then you provide whatever dollar amount you want, basically them to get pre-approval before proceeding with it, if it's going to exceed that. If you have any questions about my request, please feel free to contact me at, and then you provide like your phone number or email address, and then sincerely and sign your name. Again, if you provide a written request, certainly you don't even have to provide as much as that, but that's a pretty good example. And then I'll keep going here because I think this is also good. Can the government require a person to tell why they want to see or obtain copies of public records? No. The government may not require a person to give a reason for requesting to see public records. Access to public records should be permitted regardless of the intended use, even if a person's interest is business-driven or is based solely on idle curiosity. Now, there is one particular thing I want to get to, and that's exemptions. Let me go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and take my camera full. That way I can do all this crazy scrolling around to find what trying to find this information here. But basically, page 14 is what I'm going to go to, it looks like. And I'm going to go to denials and exemptions. And this is what they seem to say here. Let me take this full for you. Alright, denials and exemptions. There are a number of public records that are exempt from disclosure, and your request may be denied as a result. There are also exemptions to the or there are also exceptions to the exemptions. Though not an exhaustive list, we have attempted to list some here. The following are records that are exempted from disclosure. And this is kind of a duh, but attorney-client communications. The following written communications from attorneys to government bodies, if they are made within the attorney-client relationship by an attorney at law serving the governmental body, are not public records unless the government body that receives them decides to make them public. For example, communications about claims against or on behalf of the government body, communications about claims against or on behalf of the government entity the government body represents, communications about the prosecution, defense, settlement, or litigation of judicial actions, administrative proceedings, or other proceedings to which the government body is a party, communications about the prosecution, defense, settlement, or litigation of judicial actions, administrative proceedings, or other proceedings which directly affect the government body or which may directly affect the government body. Note: public inspection of these written communications from attorneys to government bodies is restricted in this way only for 3 years after the public body receives them. After that, these written communications automatically become public records unless they are subject to another exception, and they are then subject to inspection by the public. Also, a communication from a governmental body to an attorney is not confidential under the provision of the law. So let me make sure I understand this. So basically, if it falls within one of these items, A, B, C, D, it is exempt from public disclosure. It looks like for 3 years after it's received by the government. But it is not inclusive of a circumstance where a government body voluntarily discloses the information, or just the mere communication between a government agency and an attorney. Just because you're talking to an attorney, to or from, does not make it confidential in of itself. I guess it's within the confines of an attorney-client relationship. If you are a client of an attorney, then yes, it's protected or shielded from disclosure. It looks like for 3 years, if I'm reading this correctly. So let's keep going here. Trial preparation materials. Generally, trial preparation materials are not public records. However, anyone denied access to a public record that is also claimed to be trial preparation material prepared in anticipation of a legal proceeding that has not yet begun can ask a court to determine if the record is trial preparation material prepared in anticipation of a legal proceeding. The custodian of a public record shall make the record available for public inspection after the legal proceeding is over, including all appeals, or if no legal proceeding ever began after the expiration of the statute of limitations in the statute of repose. And then tax records. Most information from and about taxpayers may not be disclosed except as allowed in state tax law. Information that may not be disclosed includes information contained on a tax record, tax report, or an application for a license for which a tax is imposed, and information in taxpayer audits or in taxpayer correspondence. Information about whether a taxpayer has filed a tax return or tax report, lists of taxpayer names, addresses, social security numbers, or similar taxpayer information. State employees and officials are permitted to make limited disclosures of this information in certain circumstances, which are listed in North Carolina General Statute 105-259B. Many of these circumstances involve disclosure to other government agencies and to assist them in carrying out various laws. Trade and corporate secrets of companies that deal with public agencies. Now, I'm not going to really get into that. That's kind of, in of itself, kind of explains itself. Generally speaking, trade and corporate secrets, that's in relation to, if they're dealing with the government agency, that's kind of a given. Settlement documents. Settlement documents in most lawsuits involve state and local governments are public records. Settlement documents are public records if the underlying suit or proceeding involves the public agency's official actions, duties, or responsibilities. Settlement documents include settlement agreements, settlement correspondence, consent orders, documents dismissing or ending the proceeding, and payment documents such as checks or bank drafts. A public agency may not enter into a settlement that includes a requirement that the settlement be made confidential. However, a settlement document that is sealed by a judge's order is not subject to public inspection. Another exception applies to settlements of medical malpractice actions against hospital facilities. Those settlement documents are not public records. Parties settling these actions may agree that the terms of the settlement are confidential. Certain criminal investigation or intelligence records. Criminal investigation records are not public records. This includes criminal investigation records compiled by prosecutors and law enforcement agencies as they are attempting to prevent or solve violations of criminal law, as well as criminal intelligence information compiled by law enforcement agencies in an effort to anticipate, prevent, or monitor possible violations of criminal law. Records of investigations conducted by the North Carolina Innocence Inquiry Commission and records prepared in connection with a criminal investigation by the State Crime Lab are not public records. Law enforcement agencies have the ability to release criminal investigative records at their discretion, and a court can order their release. I'm not going to read the rest of that. That's not really applicable here. Records about proposed business and industrial projects. I'm not going to really get into that. Business and industrial projects and incentives. Not going to really read that either. Autopsy photos, video, audio, and official report. Same thing. Not going to really get into that. Emergency response plans emergency response plans / public security plans. Social security numbers and other personal identifying information. Volunteer records maintained by local school boards. State ethics board hearing records. Personnel records, and I'm going to read this a little bit because I think this might be where, if I were to envision a scenario that a government agency would try to provide themselves an out for providing certain information, I could see them trying to put it under this broad umbrella of personnel records. So I'm going to read this one. There are detailed statutes that provide what information is public with regard to most public employees. Hospital employees are treated differently from all others. For non-hospital employees, the public has a right to know name, age, date of first public employment, terms of any contract, whether written or oral, current position, title, current salary, date and amount of most recent change in salary, date and type of any promotion, demotion, or other change in classification, date and reasons for each promotion, date and type of each dismissal, suspension, or demotion for disciplinary reasons, including written notice if the dismissal was for disciplinary reasons, and the office or station to which the employee is currently assigned. The salary is more than routine pay, encompassing all forms of compensation, including benefits, incentives, and bonuses. Even public personnel data can be released under certain circumstances if release is important to maintain public confidence in the government institution. Before releasing information, though, the agency must create a memorandum that describes why release is important to maintain the integrity of the government agency. And then the next one is body camera or other law enforcement agency recordings. I'm not going to really read this one. Basically, there's a procedure for that, but it's not automatically disclosable. So basically, it can be viewed. I'm just skimming through this. It looks like it can be viewed by the person requesting it if the law enforcement agency is involved. If the request is granted, this person may watch or listen to the recording but may not copy it. Otherwise, these recordings may be released only upon court order. Any person or the law enforcement agency may petition the state superior court for release of the recording. This court shall consider whether the release is necessary to advance a compelling public interest, along with other factors set out in state law. In addition, law enforcement agency recordings may be disclosed to other law enforcement agencies or for any law enforcement purpose, to district attorneys for review of potential criminal charges, or to comply with discovery requirements in a criminal prosecution, or for use in criminal proceedings in court. So that right there is the exception. So I know that was a little drawn out, but basically what you could pretty much say is that in general, public records are public records, and in keeping with that, I'm going to now read to you the law concerning this. Not the whole law, obviously, but Chapter 132, Public Records of the North Carolina General Statutes. I'm just going to read, I think, the section or subsection B, whatever they call that. And that in this particular section reads, the public records and public information compiled by the agencies of North Carolina government or its subdivisions are the property of the people. Therefore, it is the policy of this state that the people may obtain copies of their public records and public information free or at minimal cost unless otherwise specifically provided by law. As used herein, minimal cost shall mean the actual cost of reproducing the public record or public information. I'll go ahead. I know I skipped section or subsection A. Let me go ahead and read that one because I think that might be also helpful. So here it provides a definition for public record or public records, and it lists documents, papers, letters, maps, books, photographs, films, sound recordings, magnetic or other tapes, electronic data processing records, artifacts, or other documentary material, regardless of physical form or characteristics, made or received pursuant to law or ordinance in connection with the transaction of public business by any agency of North Carolina government or its subdivisions. Agency of North Carolina government or its subdivisions shall mean and include every public officer, or official, and that is clarified to mean state or local elected or appointed, institution, board, commission, bureau, council, department, authority, or other unit of government of the state or of any county, unit, special district, or other political subdivision of government. So I think that right there is a pretty compelling. So someone making a public record request, generally speaking, the law is on their side. There are exceptions, but if it's not specifically exempted, then they have a right to obtain it. Now, I don't know exactly the full scope, or I don't remember the full scope of what's going to be done tomorrow, but basically this citizen is going to go there. That's a friend of mine. It's going to go there to seek I think to seek information, I believe, to try to get as best I think to try to get an answer to something from the town government, I should say. I'm going to be there, as I said, in the capacity of a reporter. Yes, I'm a citizen. It's called the Citizen Report, but I'm going to be there in the capacity of a reporter, documenting, hopefully. I'm going to be at a distance, but I'm going to be documenting and most likely live streaming. If something goes wrong with that, I will at least have it recorded, but I will be there to document what's going on. Now, let me move this along because this show is, I need to try to wrap up pretty quickly here, but let me go ahead and build on the last show where I talked about preparing for mandates. That's what I called the last show. So, and it's YouTube, so I have to be very careful what words I choose, how I use them. But I'm talking about this. I'm talking about this thing. And basically, employees at various companies are in the position they're either being required to get it or they're being very, very heavily pressured to getting it. There is a way out. Now, I cannot promise you that it's going to work, but there is something called religious exemption. Now, in this particular law, which I'm going to read to you, it has more to do, I think, with going to school, but at the very least, this provides you with sort of an essence, if you will, of where the law sort of stands on this. So North Carolina is basically an at-will employment state. An employer can terminate you for pretty much any lawful reason. They cannot unlawfully discriminate against you. So that is and that is covered at a federal level. So now there, obviously, you can, for example, be discerning. If you are, for example, a Christian employer, at least my personal position is that you should be allowed to be discerning of who you have employed, because you don't want, for example, someone that is against Christianity to be employed by your agency or by your place of employment, because then that will be detrimental to your business. So obviously, when I say there can't be unlawful discrimination, that's not to say that you can't be discerning and choose who you employ wisely. But as it pertains, what I'm really talking about is the stick. Okay, I can't even use the word. I risk all sorts of things like censorship, having this video pulled down. But basically, I'm going to read to you the religious exemption. I don't know if I can read every word of this, but this is the North Carolina General Statute, and again, this seems to be more pertaining to schools. And this is what's very disturbing. Further up here, it's I'm trying to find it here as quickly as I can, but basically, and I'm going to highlight this one. I'm going to pull it up on screen right now. But in this state, I don't know how other states work. I don't know how every other state works, but this is very disturbing in my opinion. They literally say in law that a child must be shot with certain things. Okay? I've got it highlighted there. I know it's hard to see that. Let me see if I can... I don't know if I can make this any better for you, but anyways, you get the idea. But thankfully, there is an out. There is an out to this, and basically, let me try to get this up as quickly as possible. I'm sorry, I'm having to scroll around here. I'm just trying to be quick about this. There we go. But even so, there is something called a religious exemption. So maybe if you're a parent and you're wondering if your child is going to have to be shot with a certain thing, shall we say, there is help for you legally. Thankfully, there is. And this is North Carolina General Statute 130A 157 religious exemption, and it reads, if the bona fide religious beliefs of an adult or the parent, guardian, or person and local parentis of a child are contrary to the immunization requirements contained in this chapter, the adult or the child shall be exempt from the requirements upon submission of a written statement of the bona fide religious beliefs or upon a submission of a religious statement of the bona fide religious beliefs in opposition to the immunization requirements, the person may attend the college, university, school, or facility without presenting a certificate of immunization. So right there, ladies and gentlemen, we have absolute. Now this right here, thankfully, is in your favor. If you are a parent and you're being told by your school district that your child must have this done, you do have, in this state, an ability to say no. I personally, and I'm getting off on a different tangent here because I'm thinking in my mind more about workplaces. I've already talked about that a little bit. But if you are in an environment where they're being hostile to you, or they're trying to make it hard on your child because you're being forced to do this, I would really highly, strongly recommend that you consider homeschooling your child. If you are in college, like I am, I'm currently on an extended break. I've been on break since March because I needed more time since my dad passed, obviously. So I've been on a longer than normal break. But if you are in a college, and I don't mean mine, I mean like if you are in a college in this state and you are being pressured to doing this, because let me tell you something, they may not be able to necessarily require you. As long as you are, for example, a Christian, or if you claim a religious exemption and say this is contrary to my conscience, this violates my conscience, they cannot force you. But let me tell you something, they are going to make your life very, very difficult. So if you are in that position, I would strongly urge you to look into the possibility of online university, online school. If you are a parent, as I said, of a child, I strongly recommend that you homeschool your child because, by the way, they're being exposed to all sorts of lies in school, like evolution and they're now trying to bring in critical race theory into schools, at varying rates throughout the country. Some more successfully than others, obviously. But they're being exposed to all sorts of worldly things. So homeschool your child. You may not be strong in math. I'm not strong in math. But you know what? You can get curriculums to help you out. You can do like for example, Bob Jones University has a BJU Press has a curriculum for children. I remember in my final, I remember taking 2 courses. I completed 2 courses. It was American Government and Economics. And let me tell you something. I guarantee you, I would not have been given that kind of rich immersion in education like I would have if I was in public school, because in public school they dumb you down, and I hate to say this, but they're basically dumbing you down because they got to bring you down to the common denominator. They're not teaching to the highest level. And by the way, I'm not particularly a smart person, okay? I don't pretend to be that, but they're literally with Common Core and all this stuff, and I know I'm getting on a different tangent here. But just understand, if you are in an environment where a school is trying to pressure you to get your child have this done, please look into into homeschool, okay? If you are in a university and you are in a hostile environment with that, you can go to online school. I know it's a different kind of discipline. It takes you have to really pace yourself and keep up with things. Now, going back to workplaces, I'm going to try to wrap this up in the next few minutes, but unfortunately in this state, the employer has a pretty broad discretion to do whatever they want. However, once again, you can absolutely submit a document to them saying, I have a religious exemption, this violates my conscience. Now, something Peggy Hull on Healthy American has said that I totally agree with. You don't really want to bring up about the scientific aspect of it, because yes, the science is also, and I mean the true science, not the propaganda, but the true science is on our side. But you don't want to bring that up to them, because that will mean nothing to them. What will get them to act what is going to actually hold up is a religious exemption, because that they cannot argue with that, because they cannot, because every Christian, a true Christian is going to believe in Jesus as their Savior. They're going to trust in His finished work at the cross. He died, He was buried, He rose again on the third day. There's basic things that we all obviously have to agree with in order for you to even be a Christian, right? But certain secondary things, such as what our position is on vaccines, that may be a little bit more varying, shall we say. So, but they cannot argue with, if the person you're dealing with is also calling themselves a Christian and they're trying to force you to do something. I'm not saying that they are, but if someone is out there like that, they cannot argue with you, even so, because your particular individual religious beliefs, if you claim to say that it violates your conscience, if it violates your Christian faith to get this, and we know that these things, and I don't know everything about this particular one, but they put aborted fetal cells in them. Of some type, maybe a derivative of it. I'm not exactly sure how to say that, but you could say, look, I don't believe in abortion, and as a Christian, I am against this. So something like that. Now, if your employer terminates you, I would absolutely go sue them. Absolutely. I would make them go to court and explain themselves. Now, they may say, oh, we're trying to protect the health of our employees. But then again, they would have to also explain how your religious beliefs weren't accommodated. And, and that goes for this thing too, by the way. Now, in closing, I'll just say, if you are in a situation where you can't get a job, I'm not saying that this to say this is not going to be easy. It's terrible. We're in the best of times. We're in the worst of times right now, because we're in an environment where society is so fallen into a pit, where we're now in this situation where there's just being all this stuff is being allowed to go on. But basically, if you if you can find a craft, if you can find something to do to market yourself. I don't make money doing this. I don't make a single dime doing this. But I can say that I do a podcast. I host, I anchor the Citizen Report, and I have a certain discipline. I have the ability to broadcast or report on camera. I haven't really done it lately, but I can do films. I've produced films in the past, and like short films, for example. When I was in college and even before college. But maybe for you, perhaps, maybe you're someone into crafts. Maybe you can do crafts. Maybe you can do artwork. Maybe you can do, you're good with handiwork. Doing house repairs, plumbing. There's a whole number of things you can do that you might be able to circumvent. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is it may get to the point where you have to be your own business leader, your own boss, and that would be, in my opinion, the very best way to counter these big tech, big globalist corporations. So I do think that for a while, this thing is going to get worse. The requirements are going to get worse, more stringent, and I think that people are going to be forced to make a choice in many cases. So I think I'm going to end it right about there. Let me go ahead and bring up this Bible verse, because I think this ties in really well to what I wanted to say. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19 and 20, and it reads, "What? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Ghost which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own? For ye are bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." So basically, as Christians, we do not even belong to ourselves. We belong to God. So And again, this is up to your own conscience to decide this. But personally, my personal belief is that these things are a real issue, because they contain things that are not good. Now, I'm already taking a risk saying that much. But it's up to you to decide. You need to decide in your own conscience. Let me also say something else. You have to be very careful right now with who you're listening to. You need to be very discerning on who you're listening to and getting your information, and where you're getting, for example, pastoral advice, I might say. I'm not going to say a person's name, but there is an individual out there, for example, who is a Christian, I guess, evangelist, you might say. I don't know if evangelist is the best word for it. He's literally out there saying, and I'm going to be very careful what I say, and I'm not quoting him, but this is sort of the essence, or sort of what I glean or understand from his statements. That basically that Christians that don't do this are being a bad and again, he didn't use these words, but being like a bad witness to lost people who did do this. And you have to be very, very careful, because let me tell you something. There are Christians out there who are so asleep at the wheel, they do not understand what's really going on. They don't get it, or they don't want to get it. I can't judge his heart. I don't know where he stands in his mind, if he's just that undiscerning. But you have to be very discerning. The Holy Spirit, who is holy, trust him for discernment, because he will lead you. If you allow the Holy Spirit, who is holy, he will lead and guide you, because he is the Spirit of God. And let me tell you something. You have to, and I've said this, you have to be very careful who you're getting your information from. There are Christians out there that are so asleep. I really want you to get this. There are some Christians that are so asleep, it is not my place to judge, but in my estimation, they shouldn't even be speaking on this matter, because, it's bad enough that they did this, but it's a whole other ball game when they're telling people that they are somehow causing lost people to not want Christianity because we don't want to do this, and the lost people did this. That makes no sense whatsoever. And again, just be very careful who you're listening to, and consider yourself blessed if you are in company with other Christians that are awake, because there are many who are not. And just because someone calls himself a Christian does not mean that they get what's really going on. So I hope that this show was a blessing today. Let me know how I did, how I can do better. I know I'm not perfect. I know I've got a lot of flaws, but I'm doing the best I can. If you got a prayer request, please always reach out to me. I greatly would be more than happy to pray with you. If the Holy Spirit is prompting you to come to me with a prayer request, it's not my place to say. But if the Holy Spirit prompts you to say something to me, whether it's a prayer request or give me advice or something, or whatever, a question about something I mentioned on this show, please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to be of service, because that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to be of service to you. I'm here to be a source of information. I hope that is helpful to you. So I'm going to wrap it up here, because my schedule, I've got to get rolling here, but God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for watching the Citizen Report. And assuming that things stay the way that I've been told that they are, I be looking for a live show on the Citizen Report Facebook page tomorrow, sometime after 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, Monday, that's tomorrow, August 2nd. So don't forget my website, thecitizenreport.weebly.com. Oh, and by the way, don't forget about Stinger.live, Stinger.live. Let me bring that up for you very, very briefly, so you can see that very quickly, very, very quickly. This is Stinger.live. This is an excellent alternative to Facebook. I highly recommend that you go check them out. Sign up, please, for an account. And by the way, if you do, come right over here to the Citizen Report Facebook or the Citizen Report Stinger page and give it a like. I think I haven't done too much with it just yet, but I'll do more with it as time goes on. So, again, let me say one more time. I really want to say this one more time. You need to be very careful who you're listening to, because I'm very concerned that there are people that are being led astray, because there are people that call themselves Christian leaders that are telling people they need to go do this to themselves. Let me tell you something. If they have something to say, they had better have Scripture to back it up, because it always has to go back to the Bible. If it's not in Scripture, it's unscriptural. It's unbiblical. It has to be in the Bible to be biblical. You know, we call things biblical, but if it's not in the Bible or it's not consistent with the Bible, then it's not. If what someone is saying is biblical, it had better be backed up in some way by Scripture. So people out there saying that they have to get this to be a good witness. You see why I'm passionate about this, because I get what's really going on. I get what the agenda is. So just please be discerning. And I know, I have to pray for discernment. You need to pray for discernment, and trust that the Holy Spirit, who is holy, will lead and guide you into all truth. He will bring to your remembrance what Jesus has said. So please be discerning. So, just because someone calls himself a Christian, maybe they are a Christian. I'm not there to judge them. I'm just saying you need to still use discernment regardless of the setting. If they have Reverend before their name, still use discernment. Okay. So God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for watching the Citizen Report. And I will see you right back here again next time. Well, from the studio, that is, from the set later on this week. I'll be back in there pretty soon. So be on the lookout for that live stream tomorrow on my Facebook or on the Citizen Report Facebook page. Just want to make sure I have said that. Sometime after 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday, August 2nd. So have a great rest of your Sunday, everyone. Be blessed. To God alone be the glory. God bless each and every one of you, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.